Have you ever felt like you were judged not for what you could do, but for who you are? Like unseen walls were blocking your path, no matter how qualified or brilliant you might be? That's what happened to Priya. She was ready to break into the tech world, armed with talent and ambition. But the interview she thought was her golden ticket turned into something else entirely. Something eye-opening. Stay tuned to find out what happens next and how Priya turned a disappointing setback into a powerful step forward. Before we dive in, let us know in the comments. Have you ever faced an interview experience that left you feeling off? And if Priya's story of resilience and standing up for yourself resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and share this story. We're building a community here, sharing stories that matter. Priya adjusted her blazer one last time in the reflection of the elevator doors. Nerves buzzed under her skin, a mix of excitement and the familiar pre-interview jitters. Today was big. Today she was interviewing at InnovateSphere, the hottest tech startup in Austin. They were known for their groundbreaking AI software, and just as importantly, for their progressive company culture. At least that's what their website screamed in bold, friendly fonts. Austin's sunshine streamed through the lobby's panoramic windows, illuminating the trendy, minimalist decor. Exposed brick, colorful abstract art, beanbag chairs scattered. Around, it all shouted innovation and cool. Priya took a deep breath, her resume feeling reassuringly thick in her leather folder. Years of coding, late-night study sessions, a portfolio bursting with successful projects. She was ready. She deserved this. She checked in at the sleek reception desk, where a friendly face with bright pink hair smiled at her. "Priya Sharma?" she chirped. "Ethan will be right out to get you. Please, have a seat, grab a water, make yourself comfortable." Priya smiled back, appreciating the welcoming vibe. Maybe all those positive reviews about InnovateSphere were true. She settled onto a plush gray sofa, glancing around at the other people waiting. A mix of young, casually dressed individuals, all tapping away at laptops or phones. The air hummed with a quiet, energetic buzz. A few minutes later, a young man with neatly styled brown hair and an even neater button-down shirt called her name. "Priya? Hi, I'm Ethan, from the engineering team. Great to finally meet you." He extended a hand, his smile warm and genuine. "It's great to meet you too, Ethan," Priya replied, shaking his hand firmly. Ethan gestured towards a hallway lined with glass-walled offices. "Right this way. We'll chat in one of the meeting rooms. Hope you're ready to dive into some code." Priya laughed lightly, a genuine smile breaking through her nervousness. "Definitely ready." As they walked, Ethan made small talk, asking about her drive to Austin and complimenting her resume. "Seriously impressive background," he said, nodding. "We've been really looking for someone with your specific skill set, especially in Python and AI modeling." Priya felt a surge of confidence. This was going well. Really well. They entered a small meeting room, bright and airy, with a whiteboard covering one wall. Ethan gestured for her to sit at the round table. "So, Priya," he began, settling across from her, "let's get started. Tell me a little bit about yourself, beyond what's on paper. What really makes you tick in the tech world?" This was a standard interview question, one Priya had practiced countless times. She spoke confidently about her passion for coding, her drive to solve complex problems, and her excitement about the potential of AI to make a real impact. She mentioned her award-winning student project, a machine learning model that predicted traffic patterns with impressive accuracy. Ethan listened attentively, nodding and making eye contact. "That's fantastic, Priya. The traffic model sounds fascinating. Very practical, organized." He paused, a slight, almost imperceptible shift in his tone. "Very efficient. I imagine you're quite meticulous in your work?" Priya paused for a beat, a tiny knot of unease forming in her stomach. "Yes, I am," she said carefully. Accuracy and attention to detail are incredibly important in coding, I believe. Absolutely, absolutely, Ethan agreed quickly. And that's, well, it's definitely a valuable trait. Especially in your background. He trailed off slightly, as if choosing his words carefully. Priya frowned, her unease growing. My background? She prompted, trying to keep her voice neutral. Ethan chuckled, a slightly strained sound. Yeah, being, you know, from your academic background. And culturally. People from your background, they are known for being very disciplined, right? Very systematic. It's really great for coding, I'm sure. The knot in Priya's stomach tightened. His words, while seemingly complimentary, felt loaded. He was talking about her background. He wasn't directly saying Asian, but it was hanging unspoken in the air between them. He was reducing her skills, her passion, to a cultural stereotype. Disciplined? Systematic? Were those really the most interesting things he found about her impressive resume? She forced a polite smile. I appreciate that, Ethan. I believe my skills and experience detailed in my resume speak for themselves. I am focused on results, regardless of background. She emphasized the last word slightly, hoping he would catch the subtle pushback. Ethan blinked as if startled. Oh, of course, absolutely. Skills are key here, definitely. And yours are, well, let's dive into the technical stuff, shall we? He shuffled some papers on the table, suddenly businesslike. The rest of the interview proceeded in a similar vein. Ethan asked technical questions, which Priya answered with ease, demonstrating her deep knowledge and problem-solving abilities. But the undercurrent of that initial exchange lingered. Every compliment felt tinged with that same subtly patronizing tone. He would praise her logical approach, her methodical thinking, again and again circling back to these stereotypical traits he seemed to associate with her background. At one point, discussing a complex algorithm, Ethan said, you remind me of one of our other engineers, David. He's also incredibly detail-oriented. And, well, he's also adopted, actually, from Korea. Funny, huh? He chuckled again, an uncomfortable off-key sound. Priya's smile froze on her face. She felt a flush of anger rising in her cheeks. He was doubling down. Not only was he stereotyping her, but he was also now comparing her to another Asian person, reinforcing his bizarre preconceived notions. And the casual mention of adoption, it felt even more inappropriate, bordering on offensive. She managed to keep her voice even. I'm not sure I see the relevance, Ethan. But I'm glad you have diverse team members. Inclusion is important in any workplace. Ethan's eyes widened slightly. Oh, absolutely. Diversity is huge for us here at Innovate Sphere. We pride ourselves on it. Look around. He gestured vaguely at the office visible through the glass wall. All sorts of people. Really vibrant. But Priya wasn't seeing true vibrancy. She was seeing carefully curated optics. A few scattered faces of color in a predominantly white, male space. Diversity brochures come to life. The interview continued, but the energy had completely shifted for Priya. The initial excitement was gone, replaced by a cold, uncomfortable feeling. She answered the remaining questions, her responses becoming shorter, more curt. She just wanted to get out of there. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Ethan stood up, extending his hand again. Thank you so much for coming in, Priya. It was really insightful. We're really impressed with your profile. He stumbled over the last word almost as if he had been about to say something else, something less polished. Profile. We'll be in touch soon regarding next steps. Thank you for your time, Ethan, Priya said, shaking his hand and forcing another polite, but now very strained smile. She walked out of the meeting room, a heavy weight settling in her chest. The sunshine in the lobby suddenly felt harsh and artificial. The cool startup atmosphere felt suffocating. As she waited for the elevator, she replayed the interview in her mind. Ethan hadn't been overtly rude, hadn't said anything explicitly racist, but it was the subtle prejudice, the constant undercurrent of stereotypes, the way he reduced her to her background instead of seeing her as an individual, as a coder with skills and passion. That's what stung. She had gone into this interview, hopeful, believing in the image InnovateSphere projected. But now she felt deflated, used. Like her qualifications were secondary, that what truly mattered to them was fitting into some preconceived mold. The elevator doors opened, and Priya stepped inside, feeling the weight of disappointment settling deep within her. Days turned into a week, and then another. Priya hadn't heard back from InnovateSphere. Initially, she tried to stay positive. Maybe they're just taking their time, she told herself. Tech companies are busy. Hiring decisions take time. But a nagging doubt grew stronger with each passing day. She had felt it in the interview, that subtle shift, that uncomfortable feeling that she hadn't truly been seen for who she was. One evening, while video calling her friend Sarah, also a coder working in Silicon Valley, Priya recounted her interview experience. Sarah listened intently, nodding slowly as Priya described Ethan's comments and the overall feeling of the interaction. When Priya finished, Sarah sighed. "Priya, I hate to say it, but it sounds like textbook unconscious bias. That subtle, positive stereotyping thing? It's actually really damaging. Companies think they're being complimentary, but they're really boxing people in." Priya frowned. "But InnovateSphere, they're supposed to be progressive. They talk about diversity all the time," Sarah scoffed. "Every tech company talks about diversity these days. It's good PR. But talk is cheap, Priya. Real inclusion is hard work. It means actively challenging your own biases and changing hiring practices from the ground up." Sarah paused, then added thoughtfully, "Look, have you checked out Glassdoor? Reviews for InnovateSphere? Sometimes those anonymous reviews can give you a real inside look." Priya hadn't thought of that. After hanging up with Sarah, she immediately went to Glassdoor and searched for InnovateSphere. She scrolled through the employee reviews, her heart sinking with each one she read. Mixed reviews overall, as expected, but a pattern started to emerge. Several reviews from women and people of color echoed similar concerns about the company, culture. Comments like, "Felt like I had to work twice as hard to be taken seriously as a woman engineer." Microaggressions were brushed under the rug by management. "Diversity is just a marketing buzzword here. The actual team is not very diverse at all, especially in leadership." One review in particular caught Priya's eye. It was from a former Asian American employee who wrote, "During my interview, the hiring manager kept emphasizing my analytical skills and attention to detail as being perfect for coding. Based on my background," he implied. "Felt incredibly stereotypical and uncomfortable." The reality of working there was even worse. Constant subtle bias and lack of opportunities for advancement. Left after a year, and it was the best decision. Priya felt a chill run down her spine. It was like reading a description of her own interview experience, months before it even happened. It wasn't just her perception. It was a pattern. It was a real problem at InnovateSphere. Suddenly, the disappointment morphed into something else, something stronger, something like anger and resolve. She wasn't just going to let this slide. She wasn't going to internalize their biased judgment as some kind of personal failing. She was highly qualified, she was talented, and she wasn't going to be dismissed based on stereotypes. Priya decided she needed to do something. She wasn't sure exactly what yet, but she knew she couldn't stay silent. Priya spent the next few days researching, talking to mentors, and gathering her thoughts. She realized that her individual experience was part of a much larger issue. Systemic bias in tech hiring, unconscious bias that often favored candidates who fit a certain cultural mold, typically white and male, even in companies that claimed to value diversity. She thought about her skills, her projects, her hard work, and she thought about all the other talented people who might be facing similar subtle barriers, being overlooked, undervalued because of unconscious biases. That's when she decided to share her story publicly. She sat down at her laptop and started writing. She recounted her interview experience at InnovateSphere, carefully detailing Ethan's comments and the uncomfortable feeling of being stereotyped. She emphasized that she believed in giving feedback constructively and hoping for positive change. Within the company, she posted her story on LinkedIn, a professional networking platform. She didn't expect much to happen, maybe a few comments from her connections, but she felt it was important to speak out, to start a conversation. Then something unexpected happened. Her post went viral. People in her network resonated deeply with her story. They shared it, commented on it, added their own experiences with bias in the tech industry. Within hours, her post had thousands of views, hundreds of shares, and dozens of supportive comments. And then the media picked it up. A tech blog reposted her story, and then a larger news website. Suddenly, Priya's interview experience was being discussed in online articles, on social media, and even on industry podcasts. The response was overwhelmingly supportive. People applauded her courage for speaking out, sharing their own stories of similar experiences, and calling for greater accountability in tech hiring. The hashtag #CodeThatCracked, suggested by one of her LinkedIn connections, started trending. InnovateSphere, initially silent, couldn't ignore the growing wave of attention. Their progressive image was now under scrutiny. Their carefully crafted PR was being challenged by Priya's very real, very relatable experience. First, they released a generic, PR-approved statement. Something along the lines of, "InnovateSphere is committed to diversity and inclusion. We take all feedback seriously and are investigating these allegations." It sounded hollow and, frankly, a little dismissive. But the online outcry didn't subside. People saw through the corporate jargon and demanded real action, not just words. Then, surprisingly, Ethan himself reached out to Priya. Not through a lawyer, not through a corporate email, but directly via a personal message on LinkedIn. He apologized. He wrote about how reading her post and seeing the widespread reaction had made him realize the impact of his words. He acknowledged his unconscious biases and admitted he hadn't been aware of how his comments could be perceived as stereotypical and hurtful. He expressed genuine regret and said he was committed to learning and changing. Priya was surprised and honestly a little moved. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it felt sincere, and importantly, it felt like a first step. InnovateSphere, perhaps prompted by Ethan's personal message and the continued public pressure, also shifted their approach. They announced a public commitment to diversity and inclusion training for all hiring managers. They partnered with a diversity consulting firm to review their hiring practices and create more equitable processes. They even reached out to Priya directly, not with a job offer, but to ask her to be a consultant, to help them implement these changes and share her insights. Priya considered their offer carefully. She wasn't interested in joining InnovateSphere as an employee, but the opportunity to make a real difference, to help them actually change their culture from within, that was appealing. She agreed to consult with them, not to forgive and forget, but to contribute to real, systemic change, to help them, and hopefully other companies, truly walk the walk when it came to diversity and inclusion. Priya's story wasn't just about a job interview gone wrong. It became a catalyst for a larger conversation, a turning point for InnovateSphere, and a powerful example of how speaking truth to power, even in subtle forms of prejudice, can create real change. She didn't get the job she initially wanted, but she gained something much more valuable. She found her voice. She empowered others. And she started a movement, another code that cracked, challenging the subtle biases in the tech industry, one story, one conversation at a time. And Innovate Sphere? They had a long road ahead, but they took the first crucial steps towards becoming the truly progressive company they aspired to be. It wasn't about perfect optics anymore. It was about real, lasting change, driven by one brave woman and the code she cracked open. Not just lines of software, but the code of unconscious bias itself. Priya's journey shows us that even subtle forms of bias can have a profound impact, but that speaking up and demanding accountability can lead to powerful change. What did you think of Priya's story? Have you ever experienced or witnessed subtle bias in the workplace or elsewhere? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Let's continue this important conversation. And if this story of courage and standing up for what's right resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button. We're dedicated to bringing you more stories like this. Stories that spark conversations, inspire action, and remind us of the power of the human spirit. Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message and join our community as we explore more stories that matter. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next story.